is breaking news from DawgNation.
Good afternoon, DawgNation. I'm Brandon Adams. Welcome to this Kroger Commitment Special. As in just a few minutes, live from Nixa, Missouri, we're going to watch what On3, the national recruiting website, is calling the nation's #1 recruit, five-star offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell, announce his commitment decision. We'll show you a live look in at the auditorium there at Nixa, Missouri. You see right there on the bottom left-hand corner, perhaps the man of the hour. That is Drew Rosenhaus, super agent in the NFL, on hand with Cantwell's family for this announcement here today. Just over his shoulder, you see the table that we've gotten very accustomed to seeing when it comes to recruiting announcements. On the far right of that table is a Georgia hat. Right next to that, hard not to notice, pretty close to the center, is Miami. And then it's Ohio State, and then it is Oregon. Those are the four finalists for Cantwell's services, although we do need to let you know that a lot has changed on this over the course of the last couple of hours. Before we go to the ceremony and see what Cantwell has to say, let's tell you what we have learned recently. You know, earlier today on DawgNation Daily, when chatter was connecting Cantwell to Miami as a possible landing spot for him, fresh off a visit to Georgia this past weekend, when it seemed like Georgia might be in the favored position, I felt like it was somewhat easy to write off some of that and maybe even disregard it simply because it was coming from such a narrow sliver of the media. Well, that's not quite so narrow anymore. The voices talking about the possibility that Cantwell will choose Miami here in a moment, a bit of an about face from where things may have been 24 to 48 hours ago, becoming hard to ignore. Let me start with Pete Nakos from On3. Nakos has had reporting on this over the course of the last week, including at one point in time putting out an eye-popping figure of $2 million that Cantwell could get if he went to Miami. Well, now Nakos is back today logging what they call an expert prediction for Miami to land Jackson Cantwell. And in his story, according to Nakos, the new per-year figure in year one would be $2.5 million, with the possibility that it could go up each year after that. Nakos does not cover recruiting full-time, although he is close to many of these players. Steve Wiltfong, same website, does cover recruiting. He recently echoed what Nakos having to say, saying that I have joined in predicting Miami to land Jackson Cantwell here today. This after Wiltfong at one point in time had put in a prediction for Georgia. So this has been a wild series of twists and turns. The initial commitment date for Cantwell was supposed to be April 30th. Georgia was able to convince Cantwell to postpone that, to take an additional visit to Georgia. That visit took place this past weekend. A lot of folks came out of that, especially with Jared Curtis, who you'll remember almost exactly a week ago, we sat here in the same studio and showed you live coverage of Curtis choosing Georgia. Well, fresh off that decision, Curtis came to Athens here this weekend to make his pitch to Cantwell. By all intents and purposes, that seemed to go well. But we also live in an age, there you see the photo from Athens this weekend, Curtis and Cantwell having fun together, Cantwell wearing at the time the Georgia t-shirt, but there is growing suspicion that there will not be a Georgia t-shirt on Jackson Cantwell today, although we will find this out in a couple of moments. Let me bring in, before we go live to Nixa, Missouri for the ceremony, my DawgNation colleague, Connor Riley. Connor, this is the second time you and I have talked about this here today. As I mentioned this morning on DawgNation Daily, I don't know how seriously I was taking the Miami rumors because they sort of seemed to come out of nowhere. They weren't really being echoed by local sources in South Florida. But in the last couple of hours, that's obviously become too loud to ignore, to the point where I guess I am now like everyone else, assuming that in a couple of minutes, Cantwell will probably choose Miami, although I'm also always on guard for some sort of surprise because it just sort of seems like we get a lot of these in recruiting in this day and age. What do you think of kind of where things stand now and how it's changed over the course of the last 12 or 24 hours?
I'm not surprised by this. I think you see the desperation in certain recruitments Miami had missed in some of their other top tackle prospects. And I think, you saw this last year with Justice Terry, where Texas felt at the 11th hour they needed to go all in and spend big on Justice Terry. With Jackson Cantwell, with the reporting out there that he's getting $2.5 million, BAU, as someone who is much closer to being a fan of Georgia football than I am or the Georgia program, the simple question that I have either for you or for Georgia fans at large, Is Jackson Cantwell, in your opinion, worth $2.5 million for the first year that he is in college?
Based on what I think I know about the rest of the salary structure, compensation structure, and based on what I think I know about the typical five-star prospect, I would say that sounds like a lot of money. And that's not me being a hater. I don't fault if Cantwell chooses Miami, and if we ever know for sure that this exorbitant NIL figure was the reason why, I think I speak on behalf of a lot of Georgia fans when I say I don't think you can necessarily be mad at him over that. I don't believe I'm turning down $2.5 million for very many reasons. So I wouldn't be mad at Cantwell for taking the money. But given the fact that this literally does not grow on trees, that there is a finite amount of resources about putting your roster together, that much money for a first-year player, it does seem like a lot to me. Now, if he goes on to be Orlando Pace or something like that, well, I guess it's money well spent. If he's as good as Andrew Thomas was for Georgia, it's probably money well spent, I guess. But boy, Connor, hard to deny, that's a lot of money.
And I'm very curious to sort of see how many more of these we see moving forward, because again, the House settlement talks in stages of getting done. There's still a lot of questions. I believe today, the 13th, is when objectors have their chance to file, and this could all potentially be wrapped up by May 16th. But let's say that at the House settlement, as we currently understand it, does pass, which as we sit here today, I expect it to do so. One, there's going to be a revenue sharing salary cap in place that is going to make it, I think, a little bit more difficult to budget your roster. I think the important thing to monitor as well is there is going to be a third-party sort of clearinghouse to review all NIL deals over $600. And Jackson Cantwell is getting a lot more than $600, and I wonder how they're going to be able to review that. Now, there's obviously a lot of questions about the legality that Deloitte might have to say, well, okay, how can you determine what fair value is if fair value is not what someone is willing to pay you for your services? And in this case, it would seem that Miami is willing to pay Jackson Cantwell $2.5 million so just for that first year. So it's very interesting. And look, I think you can look at Tennessee and the way things play out with Nico Iamaleava and see how that plays out and understand I'm not going to give someone unproven that much money up front. Miami has success in terms of the one player they have right now, Francis Moriaga. An offensive tackle could potentially be a first-round pick. But you look at everything that Georgia did in this recruitment, they were early on him. He has said time and time again he has the best relationship with Stacey Searels. Georgia has done a better job than either Mario Cristobal or Miami have done in terms of putting players into the NFL draft over the last decade. And even if you want to knock Stacey Searels, I don't know what more he could have done here other than just giving Jackson Cantwell a blank check. And so I'm going to be very interested in seeing what the reaction is towards Searels in particular coming out of this, because I think this is a guy that he really needed to land in this recruitment, given some of the pressure that was on him this offseason and given some of the heat that Kirby Smart himself took in retaining Searels after the Georgia offensive line played like it did a season ago.
Connor, we'll come back
and
to
if
you.
Georgia,
Sorry, go ahead. Finish your point.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, I said we'll come back. We'll come back to you in a moment to get more thoughts from you. Let's go live to Nixa, Missouri right now, where Jeff Sentell is standing by. Jeff, obviously in the last hour or two, we've seen a little bit of a change in the mood here where what at one point in time was Miami chatter that might could have been disregarded. I don't know that's being disregarded anymore, essentially becoming a little bit of a one-way street. National media predictions for Cantwell to now land at Miami. You are obviously on the scene where Cantwell will speak in a moment and where we've seen Drew Rosenhaus on our camera already. Is there anything you can tell us to change what seems to be a lot less optimism on the part of Georgia fans than it would have been a few hours ago?
Good afternoon, Brandon. Good being with everybody right now. I think some of your opening comments today, I think they kind of struck the right chord. I was talking with our DawgNation colleague, Kaylee Mansell, as some of these details were coming to light. And we even got some independent information on our own at DawgNation to basically source this thing, is it doesn't look like Georgia is the team to beat here anymore. So we can weigh that with what we're hearing. We can weigh that with what the national pundits are. But this becomes a situation here, Brandon. We just only know how to be one way, completely honest, completely transparent. This one kind of feels like the Georgia Tech game when Georgia's down 14 points with about 6 minutes left to go. A lot of folks are probably leaving the stands. As of right now, based on what we're hearing, it would be a surprise if Cantwell plays up to the room, turns kind of a magic act or a reversal, so to speak, with all this momentum, and actually picks up a hat other than the hat of the Miami Hurricanes.
Jeff Sentell joining us live here from Nixa, Missouri. Jackson Cantwell will make his decision official here coming up in about 5 minutes. On 3 is reported the first-year compensation figure for Cantwell could be as high as $2.5 million, which is an eye-popping number. Do you have reason to believe that number could be accurate, Jeff?
Yeah, it's kind of funny how maybe this is one of those things that elevated in the final minutes, the final days leading up to the decision. I would basically counsel here that that's a number that would be higher than the rest of the field, even though that Jackson Cantwell himself told me that they weren't really seeking one high bid rather than the other. What they were looking for were acceptable offers from all parties to where the highest bid wouldn't swing or sway to the decision. Now, Georgia did get the last visit. It was one with some goodwill behind it with 5-star quarterback Jared Curtis. But this one, you can kind of look at a couple of factors, Brandon. There's Miami not being a big fish yet in the offensive tackle market when they're kind of known for swimming in these waters. You see Georgia, and while Georgia, it might have been news for Georgia to expand the financial reach here for Cantwell, no matter how creative they were going to get, upwards in the millions of dollars per year. I think that number, if $2.5 million is accurate and even on point for the first year, I think that would cause some problems with Georgia trying to go get other coveted prospects in this class, like 5-star tight end Mark Bowman, 5-star wide receiver hybrid Caden Prothro, much less 5-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson. And really, Brennan, if most of the scouting assessments of Cantwell, he's probably more likely to be a right tackle in the SEC than the traditional left tackle. We saw an example of that at the Under Armour All-American game back in January, where Cantwell was on a squad with other 5-star offensive tackles, and he played guard and he played right tackle in those lineups right there. So, it's sort of a dramatic moment here. You've got the son of 2 Olympians, the number 1 player in the country. Initially, Brandon, about a couple months ago, Miami was the team to beat. Georgia had a surge and a spike in momentum over the last 2 to 3 weeks. And now, here at the very 11th hour, it looks like Jackson Cantwell might be headed south, but even a lot farther south than SEC country with this upcoming decision. But, Brandon, that's why we come here. That's why we try to chase this news. These are one of these things that these decisions can always change at the last minute.
We are inside of 2 minutes when we believe this ceremony is going to start. So, Jeff, we'll let you get in place from that, then hope to get a chance to speak to you and also hear from Cantwell when it's all said and done. And I think it'll be very interesting to see how specific those questions are for Cantwell about how all of this played out in the last 24 hours. We'll look forward to doing that with you here in a moment. If you're looking at the 4 hats on the table in Nixa, Missouri, I will tell you that really all 4 of a similar design. The curved bill, the Miami hat is in the center. Georgia's off to the right. It's Oregon on the far left with Ohio State there in between that. Those are the 4 hats on the table. And, Connor, before this ceremony begins, I'll come back to you. When Jeff Sentell wrote his story about Jackson Cantwell the other day, one of the things that Cantwell mentioned in the story was a little bit of praise for Drew Rosenhaus and kind of his very aggressive negotiation tactics. I think a lot of us are going to be left to wonder, is the late rumored status of Georgia kind of emerging as the favorite here? Was all of that just a negotiation tactic all along? Because if you want to go back pre-April 30th, I think Miami was thought to be the team to beat. Here we are on commitment date of May 13th. Miami once again the team to beat. It was only a brief window in that where it seemed like Georgia was surging. I guess just given the agent in play here, some of us will be left wondering, was all of this just a tactic to get Miami to come a little deeper out of the wallet for more money for Cantwell? You can't help but wonder that.
Yeah, if it was the case, I'll quote one of your favorite shows, BA, that's what the money's for. That's what they paid Drew Rosenhaus for, and it worked incredibly well. And I think with, Jackson Cantwell and this commitment, again, I think you said it earlier, and I think most people would agree to this. If you're getting offered $2.5 million for year one in guaranteed money with the potential to earn even more of that moving forward, it's hard to not say yes to that. Yeah. And ultimately, I think in a world where you have the transfer portal and you're able to, if things don't work out, you're able to leave and go elsewhere for your development. You think of what happened with Caleb Downs when he retires, and he ultimately ends up going to Ohio State. That worked out for him in that regard. And so I can't fault Jackson Cantwell for making that sort of decision with the way it seems to be going right now.
There is someone on the mic in Nixa, Missouri on site for this. Let's go and see if we can hear what's being said from Nixa, Missouri here right now.
Which would be really cool. However, we have a band concert tonight, and so there's not enough time to clean up. So if you want to do confetti cannons or whatever else, please do those out in the parking lot, because that's a lot easier to clean up before a band concert. So we appreciate all that as well. But yeah, so if you guys need anything, media, outlets, or whatever else, just grab us afterwards. We'll try to do whatever we can to make everything happen as well. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. So we will, I think do we have a countdown timer? About 3 or 4 minutes, we'll start the countdown timer, get everything rolling. So you've got a couple minutes, if you can use the restroom, grab a drink, whatever else, we'll get started soon. Thanks for being here.
So about 3 or 4 minutes away, it sounds like, on this Kroger Commitment Special from hearing the official decision for the 5-star offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell, the nation's #1 prospect, according to the national recruiting website On3, ranked in the top 3 as well for 24/7 Sports as well. Family getting in position. No Cantwell yet. We have seen super agent Drew Rosenhaus on the scene here too. And Connor Riley, I'll bring you back in on this. Another quote that Cantwell gave to Jeff Sentell, and I believe you and I talked about this on DawgNation Daily here earlier this morning, which was NIL was probably not going to be a factor, as Cantwell told at the time, because his 4 finalists, the 4 hats you see on the table, Georgia, Miami, Ohio State, and Oregon, all were of a similar offer, and so therefore you could make the decision about other reasons. And what you and I said this morning was, or at least what I said to you is, that's only true as long as those 4 offers remain similar. Whether the $2.5 million proves to be accurate or not, and frankly I'm a little bit suspicious of all NIL claims, whether that proves to be accurate or not, I do think the sense we get right now, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, is the 4 NIL offers for Cantwell are no longer similar. We at least know that, even if we can't be specifically sure of what the actual offer is. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to read between that, and you can understand with how aggressive Miami has been with the reports out there that they're paying Carson Beck $4 million for next year. I think that, that there are some programs out there that are very, okay with showing their money and waving it around and letting it be known that they can willingly spend this kind of money on a prospect. Miami has felt comfortable doing that. I think Texas Tech is another example of that, and it's all part of team building in 2025, and in this case for the 2026 recruiting class. And if you want to spend that kind of money on a prospect, as you mentioned earlier, money is a finite resource, and if you're spending 2.5 or whatever it might be on Jackson Cantwell, it becomes harder to sprinkle that throughout the recruiting class. And I think if you look at what Georgia has done in recent years, they've chosen to build through depth and have as many bites at the apple as they can. And so I think that as that gets to an exorbitant number, maybe like you saw it get with Justice Terry last December, I think that's where we are at in this recruitment. But I would also point out, by this time in Jared Curtis's announcement, he had already gotten his commitment over and done with. So a little bit of different things here today between Jackson and Cantwell as he decides between his future schools.
A little bit of a different pace here right now. On your screen, you see Christian Cantwell. That's the father of Jackson Cantwell. His mom is also there as well. That's Terry Steer. They are both former Olympic athletes. Obviously, Cantwell, in addition to being a great football player, is also an accomplished field athlete himself in the track and field sport. So good genes for Cantwell. Both of those parents on display there. We've also got more words being spoken from Nixa, Missouri. Let's check in again.
Today, we are here to celebrate an exceptional student athlete and an important milestone in his journey. To kick off this event, please welcome our Superintendent of Nixa Public Schools, Dr. Gerald Logan.
Thank you. Take a second to look around the room. This is one of the things that makes Nixa a special place. It's when we have a community to rally around each other. And I'm looking today and thinking about today, this is a very special day for not just the high school or Nixa, but our community. As we celebrate Jackson, I think we'd all agree he's exemplifies what a student athlete is. He's someone that makes great grades, he's a leader, and then he's a good athlete too, and a good teammate. I would like to say that there's an exceptional group of athletes here at this time, boys and girls, that have elevated our program and now are recognized across the state in all sports. But today signifies us being recognized even at a national level when you have the teams that are here recruiting a kid from Nixa, Missouri. And I know this, we're going to support him, and I did wish he'd pull out on this hand, I'm not going to lie. But regardless, if he goes to Georgia or Ohio State or any others, we're going to support him all the way and pull for him and cheer for him because he is setting a standard for others to follow. And we're really proud of him. And the family, too. I know you're proud of him. But I have the privilege at this time to just say once again, we're proud of him, we're excited about today, and I have the privilege of recognizing Coach Perry.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for everybody that came. It's awesome that you all came to support, one of our very own. Today's a big day for Nixa. It's a big day for college football because the greatest offensive lineman in the country is going to commit to play somewhere in the United States of America today. So it's a big day. I would like to say, hats off to Jackson Cantwell because not only has he dominated on the field since he was a ninth grader. He's done things the right way. He's done it in the classroom, he's done it off the field, he's done it, in every way imaginable. He's represented our school, our community, and his family extremely well, and that's a mouthful right there. From the first time I saw him when he was, I guess in the 7th grade, a long, lanky, tight end, I thought, maybe. And then I met Dad. I don't know if he remembers. I met Dad in the barbecue restaurant. And y'all know how parents are, right? They're like, man, son's a big kid, might be something one day. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard that a few times, right? But as it turned out, he did turn out to be something, and something really special. And he has earned every single bit of this. Sometimes he don't get enough credit because everybody wants to throw in genetics, everybody wants to throw in parents, that were Olympians, but what Jackson has done is work as hard as anybody in this school district. He's lifted weights, he's ran, he's done extra work, he's done everything in the world to give himself the opportunity to be in this situation that he's in today. So my hat's off to him. Where he chooses to go to school, look, man, when you are the #1 player in the country, there's not a bad choice on the list, right? I mean, I know they didn't flip a coin, but I can flip a coin and we will be 100% supportive and all in, and I think this community will rally behind Jackson Cantwell for the rest of his life, just like you showed up today. So, hats off to his parents because without them, he would not be here today. They have been a huge influence on him, and it's helped him in every form and fashion. So, he deserves everything he's going to get today. We're super proud of him. I'm going to introduce his O-line coach, the one that has actually made him who he is today.
That's John Perry, the head coach of Nixa High School, now introducing the offensive line coach, who will also come to speak about Cantwell here.
Thank you everybody for being here. I'm Coach Medley. It's my privilege to stand here today, both as Jackson's offensive line coach, but also his shot put coach. This unique opportunity means that I get to watch him compete all year. So I see Jackson at least 5 days a week, sometimes 6, 12 months out of the year. And that's been really special for me, and luckily we get another year of it. Today is about recognizing a young man who represents everything we hope for in an offensive lineman. We talk about it in our room all the time, but things we look for are strength, discipline, and relentless effort. All of these characteristics are represented by Jackson and the way that he plays this sport that we all love. He's the kind of player who sets the tone in the weight room, brings intensity to every practice, and leads with actions more than words. But every so often, he does speak, and when he does, people listen. As an offensive lineman, Jackson embodies a role that doesn't always get the spotlight. Most of the time, an offensive lineman is only recognized when they screw up, first by me and then everybody else. The success that we have does go unnoticed sometimes. A successful offense depends on the 5 to 7 guys up front. Ours from last year are all sitting up here, and I'm proud of them too. But nobody really sees them. They kind of go in the dark as far as work is concerned. I tell my players all the time that God made us all so big because we carry the weight of the team on our shoulders, and Jackson is the biggest of us all. Being an offensive lineman requires them to show up early, stay late, and do all the dirty work without any fanfare. It's about protecting others, often at the expense of personal glory. But what makes Jackson different and special isn't just all of that, but it's who he is. Jackson is always looking for ways to grow and continue to get better, not only for himself, but these guys sitting here too. My favorite thing that Jackson does, and it's kind of unique, I've never had it as a coach, is that he shows up on Monday nights. We finish varsity practice, he goes and gets food, sometimes he showers, he at least puts on clean clothes, and then he comes down to the sideline and he appoints himself my assistant O-line coach. He is out there helping the JV guys with anything they need, talking about footwork, giving reminders in between drives about plays, and one of the biggest things, because I'm really bad at it, is he makes sure that everybody gets in and that they all get reps, because that's how we get better. He doesn't have to do that, but he wants to. That's just because that is who he is. It's been a privilege to coach Jackson, and I'm glad that we have another season together and that he is still part of Team Nixa, but he'll always be a part of Team Nixa. Congrats, Jackie. I'm super proud of you and can't wait to see what you do at the next level. Now, you all didn't come here to hear me talk. I'm honored to introduce the man of the hour, Jackson Cantwell.
Is Kenzie Medley, the offensive line coach for Nixa, now introducing Jackson Cantwell, who will sit between his parents, choose between Oregon, Ohio State, Miami, and Georgia. Here is Jackson Cantwell.
Thank you guys for coming out. It means a lot for sure. This isn't going to be too long anymore. I just want to thank, a lot of people I can thank. I'm sure I'm going to forget some, so bear with me. But I want to thank all my coaches that have put effort into me from start to finish. Especially Coach Perry and Coach Medley. This has been a really important time in my life, and I really thank them for being there for me. I want to thank all my teachers that have spent time with me. I want to thank all my teammates, especially my trench guys, a lot of them right here. Love those guys. I'd like to thank Drew and Kyle for making this process go a lot smoother. I'd like to thank all the Nixa fans, really anybody with Nixa Athletics or a fan of Nixa Athletics. It means a lot. They show up every Friday. They show up really for everything, and it's meant a lot to this community for sure. And most importantly, I'd like to thank my mom and my dad because they've been there for me throughout this whole process. They've done a fantastic job. I love them to death. That's just it means more than you guys could ever know. And this has been a long time coming for sure. But I think at this time, I'd like to announce that I will be committing to University of Miami.
So there you have it. No surprise after the recent chatter. The U comes up. Jackson Cantwell showing off now a Miami t-shirt. Obviously, plenty of happiness in the room there in Nixa, Missouri. An emotional scene for his mom. You saw Terry shedding some tears there a moment ago. And Cantwell now joking about the fact that the hat didn't fit. But a special moment for that young man. Not good news for Georgia fans, but a special moment for Jackson Cantwell. Let's continue to listen in.
Nixa Athletics as a whole. We are very excited for you. At this time, we will open it up for media to come up front. We'll do a quick press conference up here and let Jackson answer some questions. Oh, yes. We would like to go ahead and play a video that was made by one of our former graduates, Nate Puryear. So we will go ahead and play that, and then media, you're allowed to come up and do press conference.
Can I pick this up?
You can hear there Mario Cristobal now calling in
There
to
it is.
Cantwell. Cantwell FaceTiming with
up, Coach?
Mario Cristobal, the Miami coach, as this commitment video plays. While we're waiting on the press conference, let me bring back in Connor Riley here. Connor, I don't know that we need to see all of this commitment video here. Sometimes there is very little in the way of surprise. This being one of those, we woke up this morning perhaps expecting to hear Georgia, at least I did. Over the course of the day, it became less likely that would be true. And when it finally became Jackson Cantwell's time to talk, he pretty much ended all the drama, quickly picking up the Miami hat, joking that it didn't fit. But certainly a well-spoken young man. Seems like a great guy, obviously a great offensive line prospect. Now on his way to the University of Miami, what was your reaction?
Yeah, there's a good bit of humor in there in the hat, necessarily not fitting well. But, again, I think that this is a kid who, as you can sort of tell, they're ready for this recruitment to be over it. Obviously, when looking at who was involved, this was a high-profile, high-stakes recruitment. And ultimately, look, Georgia's won a lot of those in the past. They don't win all of them. They don't win this one. I'll be interested in seeing how Georgia moves forward with how they go about recruiting in this offensive line class and what it means going forward.
Let's now go back to Nixa, Missouri, where I believe Cantwell's about to take questions. We'll find out how much he wants to reveal to us here. So we're going to get the feed back, so we're waiting to get that. As soon as we get that back, we'll jump back into it because I know people want to hear what Cantwell has to say. And Connor, I will admit, one of the things I'm curious about is how specific these questions get. Obviously, the nature of this reporting, I think, would beg the question, are you getting paid $2.5 million? And put the ball in Cantwell's court to answer that. I don't think it's an unfair question. It's Cantwell's choice if he wants to answer or not. But Connor, I don't believe that's an unfair question, correct?
We're moving closer and closer, it feels like, with every commitment in terms of finding out what these guys are getting paid. And, it might not be, clean over Kevin. We see Jackson Cantwell there right now. I'm wondering if we can pull him up and potentially hear him in that regard. Yep.
Yeah, this is a replay of the announcement. Yeah, this is the replay of the announcement.
Well, I wonder as we move closer and closer to, as these get more and more exorbitant, and fans, I think, have a natural interest in terms of how much these guys are getting paid. Journalistically, when does it come out, or when does it, get to a point where you're asking these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, hey, how much are these schools paying you? And in the old days when it was a lot more cloak and dagger, maybe then, you don't really ask it and it's all sort of kept behind the scenes. But in this day and age, I do feel like we're starting to get closer and closer to it being at least fair game to ask, hey, how much did you get paid to come here? When I think we know now that Miami was willing to go that extra mile. We've seen this time and time again with certain recruitments that they're willing to do so. And look, Georgia's paid a lot to win recruitments as well. I'm not saying that this is a sour grape situation. Sure. If he picked Georgia, I'd be interested to know what Georgia was willing to pay him, because I have to imagine it was pretty expensive in that regard. So it's one of those things of I do wonder, as it continues to go in this direction, what it looks like when we get there.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to bring up, no matter who you cheer for, be it Georgia or someone else. It's not unfair for Cantwell to take the compensation that Miami or anybody else is willing to give him. I think the one thing that a lot of fans crave, and once again, this is true no matter who you root for, is some context here. There were some Miami fans, for instance, that maybe thought the initial numbers were perhaps inflated, that Miami was maybe not offering that much money. I think they'd be curious to know what the real figures were. And this is not specific to Cantwell. It would have been true for Jared Curtis, a recruiting battle that Georgia won a week ago, or some of the ones that Georgia did and didn't win in the previous cycle. One thing we know is NIL is now the dominant factor in where guys go, but in the case of the specifics of how it actually influences them, we still get very little of that. Now, I understand why players want to keep that as private and confidential as they can, because it does become a bit of a cudgel to use against them when things don't go well. I can certainly see why they would want to protect their secrecy, but that I don't think should stop, well-meaning reporters from trying to find out what the actual story is with this or any other potential prospect.
Can I ask you a question and sort of pivoting in here, because you do bring up Jared Curtis, and Jared Curtis made a very public display to go and recruit Jackson Cantwell this past weekend. There was also a video of him today working out with baby Gronk, which I just find at best to be incredibly strange. And, look, you talked last week on your show about this idea of Jared Curtis being a Pied Piper and not St. Patrick, and someone who can sort of be the ringleader of this class. Does what happened with Cantwell influence at all how you sort of feel about Curtis and what that might mean moving forward? Or
the problem is these decisions are ridiculously hard to make because,
I'll answer that, but let's hear Jackson Cantwell right now.
The people's finalists as if these guys weren't the greatest people I've ever met in my life. These are some fantastic programs I've been recruited by, and it means a lot, obviously, to have all of this going on. But at the end of the day, I knew I had to pick one, and I wanted to decide before the summer. I wanted to have it done as soon as I could just so I could focus on all my stuff. So that's why that went that way.
Going in, there was a lot of talk about the future of your track career. How much did that play into this, and does it maybe give a sign that it's all football from here on out?
Well, that's the second part of the decision. I intend on enrolling in December. I'll spend one more semester here at Nixa High School after this, and I'm unsure if I'll have a track career after this. Might be my last year, I don't know, so we'll see.
Jackson, going through this process obviously has been exhausting but fun. What has been the most exciting part about this entire process, but also outside of the decision? What's made it so tough?
Man, the coolest part is just getting to meet all these great people and see all these great places. It's the experience that maybe a couple hundred people have ever got at the rate that I have, so I'm really humbled to get to experience that. But, just getting to meet with people like Kirby Smart, getting to meet with like Nick Saban, getting to meet with all these great coaches, it means a lot for sure because these are names that like you grow up and you watch them on TV and you're like, oh man, like these guys are like the coolest people ever. And I had no idea 3 years ago whenever Wyatt over there interviewed me before I ever played a snap that would become anything like this. So that's, it's came a long way for sure, and I'm just excited to have gotten to experience it all. I'm even more excited that I'm going to get to go to work in Coral Gables next year.
Just clarification, so you're going to go to school this fall semester of your senior year, then go down to Miami and enter college early?
Yes, sir. I will be graduating a semester.
Jackson, those that follow recruiting, they know that sometimes these things are never over until they're signed. Is there a sense of finality to this for you with your decision today?
I'm committed, yes.
Do you know when you're going to sign? There's 100 different days you can sign. Do you have a target date of when you're going to do that?
The earliest one.
We've talked a lot about your recruitment and everything that goes on with this. Just that relationship with Mario and with Mirabal just throughout all of this. NFL development that seems to be at the top of your list. Just what is it about those two, the combination of those two that make you pick Miami?
Well, they've got it all. Whenever you got a guy like Mario Cristobal as Coach Mirabal's GA, you're in a good spot. You're going to be developed by some of the best out there. They're producing guys really well, and whenever they get their guys, they're usually very successful. If you look at the track records there, and even some of the guys they currently have, I know they have a lot of guys that have done really, really well in the past, and Coach Cristobal has turned every program into a winner that he's been at so far, and I'm just excited to get a chance to be a part of it. So hopefully he wants to settle down in Miami.
You bring up 3 years ago when we sat down for the first time with Free Play Snap. Just what have you learned about yourself? What are you most proud of in the way that you've handled all of this when a lot of kids might crumble under this pressure?
Man, I just wanted to get one opportunity. I had no idea that it would turn into this. But at the end of the day, I'm just glad that I kept working and just kept trying to get better. That's a quote that you see on all my posts. NSGB, never stop getting better. And that's something that I've really just lived by. That's something that you have to do in order to keep going and keep making progress once you get to a point like this. And I think that's just what I have to continue doing. I've got to keep progressing because now that I know that I'm going to be on campus in however many months, I'm not good at counting right now, but that's something that I've got to keep getting better because it's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, and they're not going to hand me a job walking the door because no program is going to do that nowadays. So, or at least anyone that's any good. But I think that's something that I'm just excited to work towards.
How was it breaking to the family, just Miami? It's the second furthest place away in this top four, but there's some good flights to Miami and everything. Just how are the parents with that?
They got one every Saturday, I think, to Miami, so we'll be taking that a little bit. But, breaking it to them, we had a lot of back and forth about it. We had a lot of late nights talking about it because we had a lot of time to think this over. And that's why I pushed it back originally because I just didn't know. So it's hard to make a decision when you don't know something. So I decided that, on that plane ride home, I was going to tell them, and I did. And they seemed to be at peace with it, and they understood that all of my finalists are great schools, because they are. I mean, they're all really good schools. I mean, I like the situations through and through, so they were okay with it. And backstage up there, actually, I called Coach Cristobal for 5 seconds. I told him, hey, you might want to watch this, and then hung up. So he knew to get on as well.
How important was mom and dad the decision? Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, obviously they did a fantastic job guiding me through this. I mean, we found a lot of good finalists through looking at what we valued as a family and what I valued as well. And by the end, I mean, that's what made the decision tough, is that everybody was good. And we had to really start nitpicking to find stuff. But at the end of the day, I just wanted to stick with relationships, because I thought that's what I could rely on the most.
Is there any concern about possible injury in your senior year of football before you travel to Miami?
No.
Jackson, obviously, right, the other 3 schools you didn't choose, right, they all 3 are primed for a playoff run, right, Miami just lost his quarterback, Canwell. So why do you feel like going to a, quote, more of a build than the instant winner was right back for you?
I think they're winning a good amount of games right now, but I mean, I think they'll only keep getting better. If you look at Mario Cristobal's track record, all the programs he's been at so far, they've been elevated. I mean, he took over in, I believe it was FAU. Not very good at the start, and they got a lot better by the end. And I mean, if you look at like kind of what he's done with some of those programs, and now he's that program that he truly wants to stick at, I think a combination of that and what he's done with offensive linemen over the years, I mean, it's just really exciting to me, and it's really appealing.
Jackson, there was talk going into this day about some money being NIL promised for the first semester. Can you comment on anything about that? Do you want to address anything with that?
Well, Drew and Kyle have done a fantastic job working with me throughout this process, and I mean, it's just a blessing to get paid to play the game that I love. I mean, that's something that, like, there's so many people that have dreamed about getting to do that. I mean, because the NFL is like usually the end goal, and it absolutely is for me as well. And I'm just excited that I get to earn money in college and the NFL. I mean, I get to go play the game I love, people that I love, in a city that I love. I love playing here in high school. I think I'll love playing in Coral Gables as well. And I'm just glad that I get that opportunity, because it's very few and far between people to do.
Very good. Okay. Does anybody want anything individually?
All right.
Yeah.
We'll just get one in.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you guys.
So there you go, Jackson Cantwell speaking with reporters there. Final question about the role that NIL played, mentioning Drew Rosenhaus, his agent by name, and also not shying away from compensation being a part of this, although at the same time, certainly not getting into the specifics of that. Cantwell seems like a fine young man. Seems like Miami's gotten themselves a really good football player here. I'll bring back Connor Riley in this, and if we have something from Jeff Sentell or more from Cantwell, we'll give that to you. It's a Kroger Commitment Special here. Not going the way of the Dogs today. Jackson Cantwell chooses Miami. You were asking a moment ago the role that Jared Curtis plays in this. Curtis did get a chance to entertain Cantwell in Athens this past weekend, but not, I guess, able to close the deal, if you want to say it that way. And I don't know that I put a lot of this on Curtis, just to be frank, because I do think we live in a day and age, and this is one of the reasons why a lot of people that kind of outside the Georgia or the sort of typical programs like that, we are seeing a little bit more of a spreading around of elite recruits. Miami, for instance, is winning more recruiting battles than they would have been winning a few years ago, especially given their lack of success on the field when it comes to championships and college football playoff appearances and things like that. So I think the dispersion of elite players now is making, congregating around a 5-star quarterback with the so-called, dream team type recruiting class, I think it's just getting a little harder to do that. And just given that it certainly sounds like Curtis's overtures to Cantwell didn't begin until after his commitment, perhaps that kind of holds off. I believe that Jeff Sentell is talking to Jackson Cantwell. We're going to go back and hear more of this here right now. Here's Jeff with Cantwell.
It'll be like an FCS football player. If I get him to come with me for track, I wouldn't complain.
Jackson, I kind of let a lot of your local media roll through that first. I just want to know, did you take the time to call all the coaches individually and let them know, or did all the other non-winners find out from the street?
I'm going to be honest. I was up there in the second floor of the skybox of the theater room. I called Mario Cristobal for 5 seconds. I said, and I quote, "Hey, you might want to go on and watch this live stream." And then I hung up, and I have not talked to anyone else yet. I've been too busy today. I don't have time. So I took the couple seconds to do that, but I have not had time yet. And I mean, it sucks this process really because you have to let a lot of people down that you love. I mean, I love Stacey Stirls, I love Alik Terry, I love everybody at Ohio State. I mean, I think there's something to be said for this process is really difficult wherever you get those opportunities because you meet a lot of good people. But I mean, at the end of the day, I do have to pick one, and I want to get this thing done before summer. I told myself I was going to get it done before summer, so I'm happy I did.
Yeah, that's what my question earlier. You just want this to be done with, right? You're committed. You don't see any way it opens back up or anything else like that.
Well, I think a misnomer that a lot of recruits have is whenever they're committed, they still end up shopping other schools. I don't intend on doing that. I mean, I get it if a coach leaves or something like that, or I mean, it's just if they decide to go another way. I mean, that's one thing. But if I'm locked in, I mean, I'm locked in. I'm ready to get to work in January, get up there as soon as possible.
Jackson, the dominant narrative for the schools that didn't win your services today, they'll throw money in there. They'll say this school got money whipped. When I've spoken to you, you said all you wanted your representation to do was to make things equal. What was the choice? Was there one bid that was higher than the other, or what do you feel comfortable talking about maybe giving your response on your side of this thing is that money ruled the day?
Well, I think my response to it is it's not the same narrative people like Pete Nakos are pushing right now. I mean, I think there's just a false narrative that's why I'm choosing, and I think that, I mean, I think relationships won out with Miami. That was kind of what did it for me. I mean, they spent the most time with me. They put the most effort into recruiting me. I mean, I've got a lot of skin in the game with all these schools as far as getting represented by Drew and making sure that I'm going to be fairly compensated. And I think every school's done a good job with that and being accommodating with that. And I think that anyone who'd say otherwise about how I've done my recruitment has been just misled.
Jackson, did most of these bids, what was it?
Jackson. Hi, babe. Oh, congratulations.
Thank you for making it down here. I had no idea.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I didn't know if you knew we were coming or not.
I got
Sorry
you.
to interrupt, but we're heading out.
No, you're good. Oh, thank
Love you.
No problem.
Sorry, that's I love her.
Hey, obviously she's known you longer than I have. You got to get that hug.
Oh, for sure.
Jackson, for you, can you give any insight into what it looked like? Were they multi-year deals? Were there this much for this first year and then it escalated for the second year? What did the climate look like for you with what the schools were offering?
My contract is confidential.
Okay, sure.
You mentioned relationships as one of the things that led you to your decision. Was playing time anything taken into consideration for you as far as immediate impact?
Well, the fantastic thing for me is that at all of these schools, I've known that I would have. Obviously, no school is going to just give you a spot because no school worth their salt will do that. But I have an opportunity to play early at all these schools. And I know there's many schools. I know 3 of my 4 finalists are going to lose a lot of football players next year. I know Oregon's going to lose both tackles they got from the portal. UGA is probably going to lose both tackles if Monroe goes to the draft, which I think he looks a really good player. And Miami will probably end up losing both tackles unless Markell wants to stay another year. So no matter what, I knew I was going to have an opportunity to play early. And I think that's something that it wasn't really what I planned for. I just kind of slipped and fell into a good situation with that. And I'm excited and humbled to even have a chance to play year one. I mean, I definitely know from experience that from the one high school game that I didn't play before I won the job, that it's not fun to not play. So I want to find a way to get on the field, and I'll do whatever I can to do so.
Jackson, what did that last trip to Georgia look like and feel like with Jared? What was the final pitch they gave you?
Well, I mean, I had a great time with those guys. There's a lot of good people in Georgia. And again, tying back to what I said about it's hard to please everybody in this process because, I mean, Jared's a great dude. I love spending time with him. I think that I spent time with Drew Bobo that weekend. Very quality dude. He seems like he's got a similar mindset to me, and he's very locked in on football. He just wants to get better. And the staff made a great push, and I love spending time with them. I had a great time with those guys. I think they're great people. I think Stacey Stirls has been absolutely one of my favorite people throughout this recruiting process. That was kind of when my recruitment blew up, is whenever the Dogs offered me in July of 2023, and I can't thank those guys enough for how much time they put into me.
How often did your decision change? The one that you keep in your back pocket as your leader. Was there ever a time when Oregon led or Georgia led or Miami led? It seemed like Miami was the buzz 2 months ago, but then late buzz was Georgia. How much did it go back and forth? Can you give a little insight on that?
Well, Steve Wiltfong did a great job of telling everybody where I was going to go throughout this process, and that's okay. I love Steve, but I think I definitely was feeling Miami a lot after that spring practice I went to down there, and those couple of those. And that was kind of where I was at there. And then going into around April, I was really wanting to look at Georgia, but it was kind of at that point. It was kind of between Georgia and Miami still. And then after I just kind of thought about it some more throughout that time because I didn't know. And by the end, I just felt like everything I compared it to was Miami, and that was just the place I wanted to go.
Was Georgia number 2?
I think that'd be accurate, yes.
How in the world, this is a question I know you didn't expect to get from me today, how in the world do you fit in that small plane? You buy 2 seats, the one from Springfield to Atlanta.
So
how do you fit in that?
So what I like to, if I can get in first class, or like I'd say, well, it's different with the airlines because I flew Delta back from Atlanta, and me and my dad had a joke. I was in economy plus, and I called it economy minus because it was very minus the room. Like, there was no room at all. That's something that I don't really fit too well. But if I can fly first, I love to do that, or even the exit rows. The exit rows are really good if you're looking for a cheap way to do that. So I don't fit is the conclusion that I'm trying to get to.
You were the number 1 player that had an NFL super agent as your guy. What is your advice to future high school recruits of your stature, like of going with a guy that does this for the NFL?
Well, my thinking was if I was going to be represented and I wanted to make sure my contract was, I wanted to make sure it was ironclad. I wanted to make sure I'd get everything that I was offered. I think that's like why I went with the Rosenhaus agency. And my dad actually watched a Hard Knocks episode where he was negotiating for somebody. He was like, I want that guy. And we called him, and I was his second high school client at the time. So I think my advice is don't get scammed. Don't do like handshake agreements. I would get everything in writing, and that's it. There's a lot of stories where like it's been on the players' end and on the school's end. You want to make sure that everything goes smoothly with that, and you want to make sure you're properly represented because you don't want to be taken advantage of.
Can you put your finger on, you said you had a moment of clarity after getting on the plane or while on the plane. Can you put your finger on when you got dialed in that you were going to be a Cane?
I think I kind of knew for a little bit, and that visit was just to make sure that was like what I was thinking and that was right. And I was on the plane, and because recency bias is a real thing,
Sure.
So it'd been a little bit since I was there. I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, I love Coach Cristobal and Coach Mirabal. I think they're going to do a fantastic job with me either way. I love the academic side of it. I like the smaller classes. I like the campus. It's a really nice campus. If anyone's not been there, it's really nice. You guys should look it up. And it's, that's just something like in my experience, like whenever when you know, and at that point I just knew, and I figured there was no reason to wait on that.
Jackson Cantwell, nation's number 1 prospect. Pretty solid dude. Thanks for taking some time.
Thank you for covering me. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, sir. Take it easy.
Thank you, man. For sure.
What an interesting conversation. We live in a very different age in recruiting than ever before. Cantwell calling out 2 national reporters by name, not happy about certain aspects of their reporting, although some of that was just in jest, saying that he's more than happy to be receiving compensation, although also saying that his official NIL agreement will remain confidential. You can ask him a question. He'll pretty much answer. I'm also kind of fascinated by how much he seems to know. But the 4 finalists, mentioning a lot of Georgia offensive linemen by name. Monroe Freeling talked about spending time with Drew Bobo. Same thing for Oregon, too. We live in a day and age which not every high school player knows all that much about the prospective college teams he might go to. Did not get the impression that was the case with Cantwell. He seemed to know multiple offensive linemen for each of his 4 finalists. And very open-eyed about this very kind of modern world in which we currently live. Let me go back to Jeff Sentell here. We'll get Jeff here in a moment. Let me actually go back to Connor Riley. Connor, we've done a million of these commitment specials. I don't know that I've ever heard a recruit interview quite as candid as that one. That was pretty interesting.
Refreshing. I thought Jeff did a great job with that interview. I think asking the questions that we wanted to have asked in a tactful way.
Yeah.
And I give Jackson credit for answering them. I think he's been very open about this process and how he feels about it. I found his comments with regards to NIL very interesting, pushing back on the narrative that has been pushed out by Pete Nako, something I think a lot of Miami fans haven't been thrilled with, something Georgia fans haven't necessarily been thrilled with in that regard. So I'll be interested to see what sort of the reaction is to those comments. And look, I have no problem with Jeff asking the question about NIL and what he was what Cantwell is getting. And I have no problem with Cantwell saying that is confidential. I think that's how these things can and should go. And if a prospect is willing to speak on the record about some of this, I will tip my cap to them. And if they're willing to keep it confidential, hey, that's between them. So I think that was as refreshing and as candid as an interview with a recruit as we will see after the fact. And you can understand in sort of seeing that why so many people and why I think Cantwell in some regard was viewed as such a prospect as he is.
Connor, your insight on this valuable as always. I know you'll be writing plenty about this at DawgNation.com. We appreciate you being with us here this afternoon. We'll look forward to seeing you at DawgNation.com, reacting to not just this news, but obviously the most important question for Georgia fans, which what happens next after this. Jackson Cantwell choosing Miami a moment ago. We appreciate your time here today on this Kroger Commitment Special.
Yep, as always, is a pleasure.
Great stuff there from Connor Riley. Let's go back to Nixa, Missouri now, bring in Jeff Sentell. I'll echo what Connor Riley just said. Jeff, I thought those were all the right questions, especially getting into the visit that Cantwell just took to Georgia. And to be honest with you, we were just saying before you joined us, it was one of the most interesting interviews I've ever heard from a recruit, whether it be calling out national reporters by name or some of the other aspects of that. But in particular, what I want to get into with you is, Cantwell didn't seem to rave about that Georgia visit as much as we were led to believe that visit was such a significant change agent in his recruitment as recently as Sunday. I thought the way in which Cantwell spoke about that Georgia visit, basically only a trip to confirm that he really wanted to go to Miami, that was certainly different we were led to believe going back to the weekend, was it not?
Yeah, Brandon, I'm not sure how much of that interview you guys took live or you got it in full, but my perception of talking to Jackson about it, both, kind of this week, leading up to this week, coming out of that interview, is after the Georgia interview, he wanted to stay stone cold silent about anything. There was no media. He did. I think his father was quoted in a couple of online reports, published reports about it. But, he mentioned the right things about Drew Bobo, said he was wired like him. He's all about ball. He mentioned Jared Curtis. He said he was a great dude. But if you listen really closely, it was Miami that was maybe holding serve through that and even heading into that interview. And Georgia just simply didn't do enough to sway way he kind of felt going in. And we asked him a couple of times because anything can happen. And he seems pretty resolute, not only with kind of the agreement he has with Miami, but also how he's just ready to be a Nixa Eagle and just proceed to the next phase of his career without the recruiting distractions. I thought it was interesting how he did not inform Coach Lanning. He did not inform Coach Kirby Smart. He did mention the Stacey Searles relationship here a lot, Brandon. And it's one of those things like we feel this is what we do at DawgNation. This is the biggest story right now for Georgia football recruiting. Obviously, when we head this way and we make these trips, we feel like it has to potentially be an amazing story for DawgNation. And sometimes it's just a revealing story. You learn about Cantwell, you learn about his process, you learn about how he had an NFL agent working for him in this space. We did try to ask him about, hey, are the contracts multi-layered? Is it more for 1 year, more for the next year? He played the confidential card, which was every bit in his right to do so. But you just get the feeling here, Brandon, that this is a young man that's gotten what he wanted from the University of Miami. It is no secret that Miami wins a lot of these recruitments based on some of the innuendo you see with some of their reporting about the numbers for the numbers that Miami usually throws and, kind of wins this recruitment in a very deep financial waters there. I thought it was very interesting how he also spoke about, Stacey Searles' great relationship, everything there with Georgia. But it sounded like Miami was the pick after the 4-day unofficial visit this spring. There was a shift for a little bit where it wasn't completely Georgia, but it was also Georgia and Miami. And then now he goes back to Miami, and a decision that certainly feels like it fits very well for Cantwell and his family.
I guess, Jeff, the thing I'm curious about, and maybe there is no good answer to this, maybe no one knows because it's requiring kind of being inside somebody's head. We were led to believe at various points, kind of post April 30th, the original commitment date, that Georgia had now kind of taken the lead and Georgia was going to be Cantwell's choice. Do you think any of that was ever real at the time? Was all of that just a setup to get us where we are today? Is there any way to know this for sure? At any point in time in the month of May, had the recruiting process ended, do you think Cantwell would have actually chosen Georgia?
I think Well, I've said many times, Brandon, if this wasn't an NIL climate, I think he would have chosen Georgia a long time ago. He just seemed like an ideal fit there for Georgia and what they're doing. In respect to your question, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down, tinfoil hat land, and you're basically saying maybe Georgia was leverage and the buzz about Georgia was leverage perhaps to increase an offer, to do some agent work, which is what these paid professionals are known to do. I think maybe, if anything, there were signs that Georgia was still in this thing, and Georgia had kind of new life, which maybe created the climate that Georgia was now the team to beat for Cantwell. But, I'm going to take this young man at his face value, because every time I've talked to him, Brandon, he's giving me a deeper and a kind of told me more about that I wanted to know about his situation than I probably ever expected him to. And it seems to me like, just by listening to him, it seemed like Georgia just got back into the ring with Miami, but then still Miami won out as they, he even described it as a flight from Springfield, Missouri to Atlanta and then back. And Brendan, I can speak from experience. That plane's pretty small. It's about 17 rows. It's only about 4 seats wide. The wings on that plane are smaller than a three-pointer. So the fact that he figured that out while in some very cramped quarters for a 6'9", 330-pound human is quite remarkable.
We'll give you the last word here in a minute. Let me ask you one more question before we get there. On our video before the ceremony began, we did see Drew Rosenhaus moving about there. A lot of fans recognize him, as Jackson himself said. He's been on Hard Knocks. He used to be a fixture on ESPN, especially back in the Terrell Owens era. This is a guy that's pretty famous to a lot of football fans and a lot of pro sports fans in general. How big of a presence was he in the room today?
Not very big, Brandon. He was very much a behind-the-scenes guy. He wasn't even here's a great example. The previous week, Jared Curtis had QB reps, a very well-respected firm representing him last week, and those agents kind of ran the show. They set up the media scrum. They extended the interview. They said a couple more questions. They had a bank of time they wanted Curtis to work through, and then they split him off into separate one-on-ones with anybody that really wanted one. Rosenhaus wasn't doing anything like that. Him and his associate were basically hanging out in RSR branded T-shirts. They were just seeking as an advisory capacity, and really once the decision was made, they basically got out of here because they had to catch a flight out of Springfield as well. So very much behind the scenes with Rosenhaus, the famous agent and everything else like that. But behind the scenes, like Jackson told me very candidly at some points, that he wanted an agent that would take some souls, and he felt that Drew Rosenhaus did that. The way he would engage with all the general managers at all these respective universities, it was at some point where he had to tell them, and this was his quote he gave to me, is like, well, we're not really looking for the highest dollar like an NFL client would. We're really looking for a good fit of the money and a place where I want to go. And he said this a couple times to me, Brandon, and I do take him at face value, is that he wanted the money to all be somewhat equal. So then if the school he wanted to choose was so far beyond the others or below the others, then he wouldn't have to discredit them. Now, obviously, everybody can click on the internet, everybody can read headlines, and we see that if when all comes push and shove, I would imagine that Miami still had the most competitive bid here.
Sort of Rosenhaus, the Miami grad, perhaps. Happy today to see one of his clients ending up at his alma mater. But
he is based in South Florida.
Yeah, but nonetheless, Jeff, how about a final thought, just kind of wrapping things up, maybe even pivoting to where Georgia goes from here. Last week we saw Georgia get a big recruiting win. This week it goes the other direction. What is next for Georgia now that Jackson Cantwell's on his way to Miami?
Yeah, I think this is a good snapshot, Brandon, of how tough this 5-star elite recruiting will be, especially for the number one player in the country. It's almost, you see there how Miami didn't really have a signature recruiting win yet, where Georgia had Jared Curtis in the week prior. And it's almost like I almost want to look at it now from the filter of who's shot their shot, who's got kind of max dollars available, kind of like what NBA teams do when they're trying to look at a super max contract, or NFL salary cap type stuff. The one thing I will say, the best pivot I can share with DawgNation, you guys are still watching this, is it's, every decision made in this market, Brandon, has a ripple effect. What this means now is that the spend for Georgia can probably be greater for a guy like Mark Bowman. It can be greater for a guy like Savion Hyder in Monroe, Virginia. Can be greater now for Tyler Atkinson. And, for those that, wondered if this was really a true prototype left tackle and the escalating costs that it's going to be, well, that gives Georgia more financial resources to pursue the other 5 stars and their other top targets in this class. Maybe losing Cantwell probably brings another high-value target on the board that maybe they might not have gotten now if he would have chosen the red and black today.
Well, obviously it doesn't work out great for Georgia, but please pass on to Jackson how much we wish him well. Obviously seems like a fine young man and obviously a terrific football prospect. Jeff, we also appreciate your coverage along with Kaylee Mansell from Nixa, Missouri. Great job. Great questions to Jackson a moment ago. Y'all be careful coming back, and we'll see you back here in the great state of Georgia again very soon.
Take it easy, Brandon. We still got some more stories to tell on Before the Hedges on Wednesday about this week, too.
All right, so good stuff there from Jeff Sentell along with Kaylee Mansell on the scene in Nixa, Missouri. 5-star offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell has made his commitment to the University of Miami, seemingly bringing an end to his recruiting process here in Georgia. A week after winning with the 5-star quarterback, not able to pull the double dip here with Cantwell, despite the fact that Curtis and Cantwell were together in Athens last week. As Jeff said, plenty more stories coming on this at DawgNation.com. I'll also see you tomorrow morning for DawgNation Daily. We'll get into this, and of course, Before the Hedges, presented by Kroger, our recruiting show tomorrow evening, following up on even more of kind of where it went wrong with Cantwell, and maybe most importantly for Georgia fans, what happens next. And of course, we appreciate Kroger being a part of all of our coverage here today. Make sure you check out our friends at Kroger and try the brand new membership opportunity from Kroger, known as Kroger Boost. You want more time, you want more money for the things you enjoy this summer? Well, our friends at Kroger got that for you. You can even try for free for 30 days. Kroger.com/boost is the website. That's Kroger.com/boost. Take advantage of free grocery delivery, free grocery pickup, and on the things that you're already buying at your local Kroger. How about twice the fuel points when you make those purchases, saving money at the pump, giving you more time for the stuff you love here this summer. That is what Kroger is all about. So try it online for free for 30 days. Kroger.com/boost for more on that today. Thanks for being here for this Kroger Commitment Special. Jackson Cantwell chooses Miami. We'll look forward to talking to you again soon.